Ladies and gentlemen, listen close. This is not just a story. This is a battle unfolding in the very core of our souls. It's a war, a relentless fight between two forces that shape our destiny. On one side, you have the narcissist, the embodiment of pride, self-worship, and empty promises. On the other, you have God, the source of true power, humility, and unshakable love. Now, I want you to ask yourself, in this war, who really wins? The loudest voice in the room shouting, "Look at me," or the silent strength that carries the weight of the universe with grace? The narcissist thrives on control, deception, and breaking others down to build themselves up. But God builds us up by tearing down the walls of ego, filling the void with purpose and truth. You see, the spiritual war isn't won by sheer force or bluster. It's won in the quiet moments of surrender and faith. So where do you stand in this battle? Are you caught in the web of narcissism, chasing validation from empty mirrors? Or are you anchored in the power that transcends the self? The power of God. Let me remind you, no matter how loud the narcissists roar, the voice of God will always echo longer, deeper, and louder inside your heart. And now I want you to reflect, look inside yourself and ask, who's winning your spiritual war today? Now, let's slow down a moment and really talk about this idea of narcissism. What is it, really? It's more than just someone who's full of themselves. Narcissism is a hunger, a deep craving that never gets satisfied. It's like an endless pit, a desert thirst that no amount of praise or attention can ever quench. The narcissist depends on the world looking at them, admiring them, applauding their every move. It's not about connection or love. It's about control. It's about feeling powerful, feeling like they matter, by demanding that everyone else bow to their image. Think about it. The narcissist world is built on a shaky foundation because it's not rooted in truth or humility. It's built on reflection, a mirror that only shows their face, their glory, their supposed greatness. But mirrors lie. They show you what you want to see, not what you need to see. And so the narcissist is trapped in a cycle, chasing a reflection that slips further away the harder they try to hold on. But here's the thing you have to understand. The root of narcissism is pride, pure and simple. It's pride that tells someone they are above others, that their needs are more important, that their story deserves the spotlight no matter the cost. Pride whispers, "I am the center of this world." And when pride is left unchecked, it becomes a cancer in the soul. It isolates, it blinds, and it destroys relationships. It robs people of true joy because happiness built on ego is as fleeting as the applause in a crowded room. You ever meet someone who always has to be right? Someone who interrupts, who dominates conversations, who never really listens because they're waiting to speak again. That's narcissism's echo. It's not just about being self-centered. It's about an inability to see beyond oneself, an unwillingness to be vulnerable or to admit weakness. Vulnerability scares the narcissist because it threatens their carefully crafted image. It's easier to wear a mask of invincibility than to face the truth of who they really are. Now, let me ask you something. How many of us fall into this trap without even realizing it? How often do we chase approval like it's a currency, putting our worth in the hands of others? When you post something on social media and wait for the likes to roll in, or when you feel crushed by criticism, that's the same hunger, the same thirst narcissism feeds on. It's a hunger that tells you, if only they see me, if only they praise me, then I'll be enough. But you're not alone in this battle. We all wrestle with pride. We all want to be seen, to be valued, to be understood. But here's the challenge: the narcissist's way is a dead end. It's a war that cannot be won because it depends on an external validation that is never consistent, never reliable. One moment you're the king or queen of the world, and the next you're invisible, forgotten, or attacked. It's a roller coaster that leaves you dizzy and empty. Now contrast that with God's way, where worth is not measured by what others think, but by who you are in the eyes of your Creator. God does not demand the spotlight. God does not need applause. God's power is steady, unwavering, and grounded in love and truth. While the narcissist builds a house on sand, God builds on rock. I want you to think about this deeply, because pride is the doorway the narcissist walks through, but humility is the doorway God invites us to enter. Humility is not weakness. No, it's the courage to be real, to admit your faults, to embrace your humanity. It's the strength to stand tall without tearing others down, to lead with love instead of fear, to trust that you are enough. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And here's where the war gets personal. That battle between narcissist and God isn't just out there. It's in here, inside you, inside me. Every time we choose pride over humility, control over surrender, we feed the narcissist's hunger inside us. But every time we choose faith, every time we choose love, every time we choose to put ego aside and listen to God, to others, we weaken the narcissist's grip. Now, I want to look right at you. Yes, you. What hunger are you feeding today? What voice is winning inside your heart? Are you chasing that endless thirst for approval and praise? Or are you resting in the truth that you are deeply loved and enough, just as you are? Because here's the truth, and I want you to hear this with every fiber of your being: no mirror, no applause, no hollow praise can satisfy the soul the way God's love can. You can never outshine the sun, but the sun shines on you every day without fail. So don't spend your life chasing reflections that fade. And now I want you to take a moment, wherever you are. Look inside yourself and ask, what am I feeding right now? The hunger of pride or the peace of humility? The empty echo of the narcissist or the steady voice of God? Because this war is not just about who wins out there, it's about who wins in here. Now listen closely, because this is where it gets real. When we talk about God's power, we're not talking about power as the world sees it. The world's idea of power is loud, flashy, and demanding. It's about being on top, controlling every situation, bending everything to your will. But God's power is something altogether different. It's humble, it's quiet, it's unseen yet unstoppable. God doesn't need a spotlight. God doesn't have to shout to be heard. The power of God is like the wind. You don't always see it, but you feel it. It moves through your life in ways you can't always explain. It's not the power that forces others down. It's the power that lifts others up. It's not the power that grabs attention for a moment. It's the power that lasts forever. You see, this is why the spiritual war is so fierce. Because the narcissist demands attention, thrives on being seen, and wants to control the narrative. But God's power invites surrender. It says, let go and I will carry you. It asks for trust, not control. And that's why it's so easy for us to resist God's power. We want to be in control. We want to be the loudest voice in the room. We want to hold the reins. But true power, God's power, doesn't force its way in. It enters softly and changes everything from the inside out. Think about the stories you've heard. The stories where God moves in the quiet corners of life. A single act of kindness that turns a heart around. A whispered prayer that calms a storm. A moment of peace that floods your soul when everything else is falling apart. That's God's power in action. It's not about flashy miracles or grand gestures. It's about transformation. The kind of deep, lasting change that can't be seen with the eyes but felt with the heart. And here's what you need to hear. This humble power is stronger than any ego, any pride, any narcissistic roar. Because it's not fragile, it doesn't need to defend itself. It doesn't crumble under pressure. It's the power that raised mountains, parted seas, and turned graves into gardens. It's the power that speaks life into the broken, hope into the hopeless, and light into the darkness. So many times we get caught up in the loud voices, the ones demanding to be heard, and we forget the power that's right in front of us. The power of God working quietly through us, through love, patience, and forgiveness. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't go viral. But it changes lives. It changes hearts. And it changes the world. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you felt that quiet power at work in your life? When was the last time you let go of trying to control everything and trusted that something greater was carrying you through? Because that's where God's power lies, not in our strength, but in our surrender. Now, I know surrender is scary. It feels like giving up, like weakness. But I want you to see it differently. Surrender is the ultimate strength. It takes courage to admit you can't do it all on your own. It takes bravery to let go of your pride and say, I need help, I need God. And when you do, something amazing happens. The power of God moves in and the spiritual war inside you begins to shift. This power doesn't just defeat the narcissist, it replaces it. It doesn't shout louder, it speaks deeper. It doesn't tear down, it builds up. And that's why, no matter how hard the narcissist tries, they can never win against the power of God, because God's power is eternal. It's not based on circumstances or feelings. It's rooted in something far greater than any human ego. You might be thinking, but what about when I feel weak? What about when I doubt? That's exactly when God's power shows up the most. It's in those moments of weakness that the true strength of God shines through. It's the power that carries you when you can't carry yourself. It's the power that gives you peace when chaos surrounds you. It's the power that says, I am with you. You are not alone. So here's the truth I want you to carry with you. The world's power will fade. The loudest voices will be silenced. But God's power, it will never fail. It will never run out. It will always be there, steady, strong, and ready to lift you up. Now I want you to pause for a second and ask yourself, what power are you leaning on today? Are you reaching for the power that demands control and applause? Or are you opening your heart to the quiet, humble, unstoppable power of God? Because that choice, right there, decides who wins the spiritual war inside you. Take that in. Let it sit with you. Feel it in your bones. And when you're ready, make that choice again and again. Because this war is not over in one moment. It's a daily battle. But here's the good news. With God's power on your side, victory is already within reach. Now, I want you to lean in close, because this next part, this is the heart of the matter. The spiritual war, the battle between the narcissist and God. It's not fought out there somewhere on a distant battlefield. No, this war is fought right here inside each one of us. It's an internal battle that shapes who we are, who we become, and ultimately who wins in our lives. You see, the narcissist wants the war to be external because that's where their strength lies, in controlling what others think, in dominating the outside world. They want the spotlight, the recognition, the applause. But God's power works differently. God works on the inside, in the quiet places of our hearts, in the depths of our spirit where no one else can see. This is the battlefield that truly matters, the one that determines whether pride or humility will reign. Think about it. When you wake up in the morning, who wins the battle inside your mind? Is it the voice telling you to prove yourself, to push harder, to be seen and admired? Or is it the voice inviting you to slow down, to trust, to surrender control and embrace grace? That's the spiritual war. It's the constant pull between self-centeredness and God-centeredness. This war is personal, it's messy, it's uncomfortable, because it forces us to look in the mirror and face parts of ourselves we don't want to admit, our fears, our doubts, our pride. The narcissist inside wants to cover those parts up with arrogance, with noise, with distraction. But God's way is to bring those parts into the light, to heal them with truth and love. Now, I want you to imagine a tug of war. On one side is your ego, the part of you that wants control, recognition, and to be first. On the other side is your faith, the part of you that knows there's something bigger than yourself, something worth surrendering to. Every day, every moment, you're pulled between these two forces. The question is, which side do you feed? Which side do you strengthen? Here's what's powerful about this internal battle. It's not about winning once and for all. It's about winning moment by moment, choice by choice. Because the narcissist is relentless. It never stops pushing, demanding, craving. But God's spirit is just as relentless, patient, persistent, and full of grace. When you stumble, when you fall into old habits of pride and control, God invites you to get back up, to try again, to keep fighting the good fight. And here's a truth I want you to hold on to. This war is where true freedom lies. When you learn to recognize the narcissistic voice inside you, when you learn to challenge it and replace it with the voice of God, that's when you begin to be truly free. Free from the need to prove yourself. Free from the chains of ego. Free from the lies that say you are less than enough. But that freedom doesn't come easy. It requires courage to face yourself honestly. It requires humility to admit you don't have all the answers. It requires faith to trust that God's way, though sometimes harder, is the better way. And let me tell you, this is the hardest battle most people never win. They get caught in the noise of the world, distracted by the battle outside, never realizing the war inside is what really counts. But you have the chance today to be different. You have the chance to turn inward, to be honest with yourself, and to choose the path that leads to life, not destruction. Now I want you to pause and reflect. Where is your internal battle today? What voices are fighting for control inside your heart and mind? Are you listening to the voice that demands to be seen, that pushes you to build walls around yourself? Or are you hearing the quiet call of God, inviting you to lay down your pride and walk in humility? Because here's the thing, the spiritual war inside you is shaping your world outside. How you treat others, how you make decisions, how you carry yourself, it all flows from which voice wins inside. When pride wins, it destroys relationships, it breeds anger, it isolates. When God's voice wins, it brings peace, it builds community, it restores hope. This war is not a one-time battle, it's a lifelong journey. But every battle you win inside brings you closer to the victory God promises. And that victory, it's more than just winning over pride or narcissism. It's about becoming the person you were created to be. Whole, humble, and filled with love. So I want you to ask yourself, what battle are you fighting today? And more importantly, who will win? The narcissist who wants to control and consume, or God who offers peace and power beyond measure? Because remember, the war that truly matters is not outside, it's inside. And inside you lies the power to choose who wins. Now listen here, because this next part cuts to the bone. The narcissist, make no mistake, they don't build themselves up by lifting others. No, their strength comes from breaking others down. They don't create power by generosity or love. They create it by tearing down, by sowing seeds of doubt and insecurity around them. That's how they rise, by pushing others lower. Think about it. The narcissist thrives in a world where everyone's scrambling for attention, for recognition. And instead of encouraging others, they dim the lights on anyone who might outshine them. They plant whispers, they spread lies, they turn friends into foes. It's a cruel game of, who can I tear down today so I can feel bigger? But here's what you have to understand, this kind of power, this control through destruction, is a house built on sand. It's temporary. It looks strong, but it's weak at the core. Because tearing others down doesn't actually make you stronger. It just creates enemies, fear, and loneliness. You ever notice how the narcissist's victories feel hollow? The applause fades fast. The friendships don't last. And deep down, there's always this gnawing emptiness because you can't build a life on the suffering of others. That's not strength. That's fragility disguised as power. Now contrast that with something greater. When God builds by restoring, by healing. God's power is not about control, it's about creation. It's about lifting up the broken, comforting the hurting, and giving hope to the hopeless. Where the narcissist destroys, God repairs. Where the narcissist divides, God unites. Imagine the difference this makes, not just in the world, but inside you. When you tear others down to build yourself, you're chained to your own ego. You live in fear that someone will expose you, that someone will take away what little power you have. But when you choose God's way, when you choose to build others up, you set yourself free. You step into a power that isn't threatened by others' success but celebrates it. This is the heart of the spiritual war, choosing what kind of power you want to live by. The power that destroys or the power that restores. The power that isolates or the power that connects. The power that leaves you empty or the power that fills you with peace. And here's what's beautiful: God's power is always available to you. It's not reserved for the perfect or the powerful in the world's eyes. It's there in your willingness to forgive, in your acts of kindness, in your courage to love even when it's hard. That's where God builds, in the everyday moments where you choose to lift others up instead of tearing them down. I want you to take a moment and think about the times you've been hurt by someone else's selfishness. Maybe a friend who used you, a colleague who undermined you, or even a family member who put themselves first at your expense. You felt that pain because you were broken down, diminished. But imagine what would happen if, instead of responding with bitterness or revenge, you responded with the power to restore. That's the power God gives us, the power to break the cycle. To refuse to tear others down, no matter how tempting. To build bridges instead of walls. To be the light that shines in the darkness. And make no mistake, this is hard work. It takes strength to hold your tongue when you want to lash out. It takes grace to forgive when you've been wronged. It takes courage to love when love feels risky. But that's where true power lies, in that place of restoration. So I ask you today, what kind of power are you living by? Are you holding on to bitterness, tearing others down to prop yourself up? Or are you choosing the hard, beautiful work of building others up, trusting that God's power will carry you? Because the truth is, no matter how much noise the narcissist makes, no matter how loud they try to shout, they can't win in the end. The power that breaks down will always fall. The power that restores will always rise. Let me talk to you about something that's at the very core of this spiritual war, the way God builds. Because while the narcissist tears down, God is always at work restoring, healing, and filling what's broken inside us. This isn't just about fixing what's damaged, it's about transforming lives from the inside out. You see, the narcissist's power comes from scarcity. They believe there's not enough love, not enough attention, not enough success to go around. So they try to grab what they can by pushing others aside, by tearing them down. But God operates on a different principle: abundance. God's love is endless. God's grace overflows. God's healing is not limited or rationed. It's poured out freely even to the one who feels unworthy. When God builds, it's not about competition or comparison. It's about restoration, taking what's broken and making it whole again. It's about hope, bringing light where there was darkness, peace where there was turmoil, and joy where there was sorrow. This is the power that changes hearts, that mends relationships, that rebuilds communities. Think about those moments in your life when you felt completely lost, empty, or broken. Maybe it was a time of grief, or failure, or rejection. Maybe it was a moment when the weight of the world pressed down so hard you thought you couldn't breathe. But somehow through the cracks, God's healing power found you. It showed up as comfort from a friend, a quiet peace in your soul, or a sudden strength you didn't know you had. That's God building. That's restoration in action. And it's available to you right now, no matter what you're carrying. No matter how deep the wounds or how heavy the past, God's power is here to restore and renew. But restoration isn't always easy. Sometimes it means facing the hurt, admitting the pain, and taking steps forward even when it feels uncertain. It means forgiving when it's hard, trusting when it's scary, and loving when it feels risky. But here's the truth. Every step toward restoration is a step away from the destruction the narcissist wants to leave behind. God doesn't just patch things up. God rebuilds stronger, deeper, and more resilient. It's the kind of building that lasts through storms and trials. It's a foundation of grace and truth that no force on earth can shake. And here's what that means for you. When you choose to walk with God, when you open your heart to this healing power, you're not just surviving the spiritual war. You're winning it. You're becoming a beacon of hope, a living testimony that restoration is possible. You're breaking the cycle of destruction and planting seeds of new life. So I want you to ask yourself, where do you need God's restoration today? What parts of your life are waiting to be healed? What broken places are you ready to let God build stronger than ever before? Because remember, God's power to build is not limited by your past or your mistakes. It's only limited by your willingness to say yes to healing, to surrender, and to trust. And when you do, you become part of something greater. You become a builder of peace, a bringer of light, and a warrior in the spiritual war who fights not with destruction, but with restoration. Let me speak to you about something that too often gets overlooked in this spiritual war: the power of surrender. Now, I know surrender sounds like giving up. It sounds like weakness. But I want you to hear me carefully. Surrender is the ultimate strength. It's not defeat. It's not loss. It's a doorway to victory. See, the narcissist fights to control everything. They cling to power because they fear losing it. They build walls so high because inside they're afraid. They're terrified of being vulnerable, of being exposed, of being less than perfect. But God's power doesn't come from control. It comes from surrender, from letting go, from saying, I can't do this alone. There's a story I want you to think about, the story of a man who carried a burden so heavy, he couldn't bear it alone. He had to surrender to a power greater than himself. And in that moment of surrender, he found strength that no human force could give. That's the kind of power God offers. It's not about holding on tighter. It's about letting go. When you surrender, you stop fighting alone. You stop trying to prove yourself or earn your worth through pride or control. You open your heart to grace. You make room for healing. You invite God to take the lead. I want you to imagine this. You're holding a heavy stone in your hand. Your pride, your need to be right, your desire for control. It's weighing you down. Every day it's a struggle to carry it. Now, what if you could set it down? What if you could hand it over to God and say, "Here, you take this burden." That's surrender, and that's freedom. Surrender requires courage. The courage to admit you don't have all the answers. The courage to trust even when you don't understand. The courage to be vulnerable in a world that rewards toughness. But that courage is the key to winning the spiritual war, because the narcissist's power is fragile. It collapses when met with the humble strength of surrender. When you surrender, something shifts inside. The chaos quiets. The fear fades. The battle that once felt so fierce becomes manageable because you're not fighting it alone anymore. You're standing in the power of God's love and grace. I know it's not easy. Sometimes surrender feels like falling. But I want you to know, falling into God's hands is the strongest place you can be. It's where you find peace that surpasses understanding, where you find joy that can't be stolen, where you find hope that never dies. So today, I ask you, what are you holding on to that you need to surrender? What walls are you building that keep God's power from moving freely in your life? What pride is blocking your path to victory? Because here's the truth, the spiritual war is won not by clenching tighter, but by letting go. Not by shouting louder, but by listening deeper. Not by demanding control, but by trusting completely. And when you make that choice, when you surrender, you step into a power greater than any narcissist can ever know. You step into a power that transforms, restores, and conquers. Now, I want you to really listen, because this next truth cuts straight to the core of this spiritual war. The voice of God is persistent. It's enduring. It doesn't shout just to be heard once and then fall silent. No, the voice of God is steady, constant, and unwavering. While the narcissist's voice might roar loudly in a moment, fading as quickly as it came, God's voice is the one that echoes through the corridors of your soul forever. Think about it. How many times have you heard the loud, demanding voices of the world, trying to shape who you are? Maybe it was the voice of someone trying to tear you down, or the noise of your own doubts and fears, shouting that you're not enough. Those voices come and go. They flare up like firecrackers, bright and loud for a moment, but leaving behind only smoke and silence. But God's voice, it's different. It's like a river that never runs dry. It flows through the valleys and climbs the mountains of your life. It whispers when you need comfort. It calls when you need direction. It sings when you need joy. And even when life gets loud and chaotic, God's voice remains patient, persistent, full of love. You see, the narcissist depends on noise to cover up insecurity, noise to mask fear, noise to demand attention. But God's voice is rooted in truth. It doesn't need to scream or demand. It simply is. And that quiet, enduring presence is more powerful than any shout. Here's the challenge, though. In the chaos of life, it's easy to miss that voice. It gets drowned out by distractions, by the noise of the world, by our own fears and doubts. Sometimes we listen more closely to the voices that tear us down than to the voice that lifts us up. But God's voice is always there, waiting for us to turn our hearts back and listen. And here's the beauty. Because God's voice is persistent, it never gives up on you. No matter how many times you ignore it, no matter how far you stray, that voice keeps calling. It's relentless in its love. It's unwavering in its grace. You might feel like you've been silent for too long. You might think you've missed your chance. But God's voice doesn't keep score. It doesn't hold grudges. It just keeps inviting you back to hope, back to healing, back to life. So what does it mean to listen to this persistent voice? It means quieting the noise. It means making space in your life for moments of stillness and reflection. It means trusting that the soft whisper of God is stronger than the loudest shout of the narcissist. And when you listen, really listen, you begin to hear things differently. You start to recognize your worth, not because of what the world says about you, but because of what God says. You start to find peace, not because circumstances have changed, but because the voice of God brings calm in the storm. This voice, this steady, enduring voice, becomes the foundation on which you build your life. It becomes the anchor in the spiritual war. No matter how fierce the battle outside, inside you can stand firm because God's voice is always there, calling, guiding, loving. Now I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, which voice are you tuning into today? The fleeting, loud voice that demands to be heard but leaves you empty? Or the steady, persistent voice of God that fills you with peace and purpose? Because the answer to that question will determine who wins the spiritual war inside your heart. Now this right here, that choice you make every single day, that's the most important thing in this whole spiritual war. Because at the end of the day, who wins inside your heart depends entirely on the choices you make. The narcissist, they don't just appear out of nowhere. They grow when you feed them. When you choose pride over humility, control over surrender, self over God. But God wins when you decide to trust, to love, to live beyond yourself. Every morning when you open your eyes, you're faced with that decision. Which voice will you listen to? Which path will you walk? Will you chase after fleeting approval, trying to prove you're enough? Or will you stand firm in the truth that you are already enough? Not because of what you do or what others say, but because of who God made you to be. That's the choice that defines the war. Because it's not about some grand moment of victory where the narcissist suddenly disappears. No, it's about the small, daily battles. The moments when you choose kindness over anger, humility over pride, grace over judgment. It's in those moments that God's power grows inside you, pushing back the darkness, dimming the narcissist's roar. And let me tell you something. The choice to follow God's way isn't always easy. It takes courage. It means standing up when it's easier to give in. It means loving when it's easier to hate. It means forgiving when you'd rather hold a grudge. But every time you make that choice, you're winning the war. You're building a life that's strong, steady, and rooted in something real. Imagine the power of that, knowing that no matter what's happening around you, no matter how loud the narcissist tries to shout, you have the power inside to choose differently, to choose peace, to choose love, to choose God. This is the freedom that comes from making the right choice, not once, but again and again. Because the spiritual war is not won in a moment. It's won in a lifetime of moments. So I want you to take a deep breath and ask yourself, what choice are you making today? Who's winning your spiritual war right now? The voice that demands to be seen, or the voice that calls you to faith and humility? Because this war is personal and this war is real. But the good news is victory is already within your reach. Now, tell me, what choice will you make today? Who will win inside your here? Here's a powerful ending to close your speech with impact and connection. So now I leave you with this: the war between the narcissist and God isn't just out there. It's inside you. It's a choice every day, every moment. And no matter how fierce the battle feels, remember this: God's power is greater. His love is stronger. His voice is louder. So stand tall. Choose humility over pride. Choose surrender over control. Choose the voice that brings life, peace, and restoration. Because in that choice, you don't just survive the spiritual war, you win it. And now I ask you, what side are you on?